All right, you are amazing sticking with me, learning these amazing spiritual technologies from Jewish mysticism. And again, you got to look at them many times, integrate them. It's not enough to know something, you have to feel it. It has to become part of your database inside you. Now, what I'm going to say is super, super critical, and that is the idea of identification. We must, in marriage, just like, let's say I'm a man, so I have a wife. I say that is my wife. There's a special bond between people. They say blood is thicker than water. When you say that person is me, my wife, my child, my parent, my sibling, why is that special? Because we all have an innate love for ourselves. And when we see someone else as ourself or part of ourself, we extend that innate love. In fact, unfortunately, that's why depressed people stop loving even their children, because the reason they love them is because they love themselves. So you get that. So loving yourself is important. And most importantly, when you expand who the self is. But what's really important is to understand that just like you love your wife because she is your wife, she loves you because you are her husband. Just like you love your child because it is your child loves you because you are their parent. So remember, these relationships don't only go one way where you love them because they are part of you. They love you because basically the reverse is true. You are part of them. Now, the main thing that I want to convey is that when we are in a relationship, we have to be sensitive to the other person's emotions. It's not like, oh, well, that person's part of me, I love them, and now let's do things my way. The only way for a relationship to work is you actually have to be sensitive to the reason why the person is saying what they're saying. And the example that I bring is, let's say your wife says, let's go take a vacation and we're going to stay at my in-laws. And you're like, what a bad idea to stay at the in-laws. Now, you say, whatever. So the wife has to be smart. She has to think, okay, how would I feel about staying at my in-laws? Well, I wouldn't feel that great. Well, that's how he's feeling. You can only understand the way someone's feeling if you can put yourself in their shoes. And so if somebody comes to you with a problem, particularly the people closest to you, don't just go run off and solve the problem. What you have to do is you have to first feel the problem. One of the greatest Jewish masters, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber, when he was very young, he and his brother, because his father was a Rebbe, a great master, they used to play Rebbe Chassid. And basically the disciples come to the master and they ask for help and this spiritual advice, that spiritual advice. And so he was the younger boy, Shalom Dov Ber, and he asked his older brother, he says, I forgot to pray, or I forgot to make a blessing before I ate. What should I do? So he gave him advice. You should daven from the siddur. Every time you make a blessing, you should use the prayer book. He says, it's not going to work. You're not a Rebbe. He says, what do you mean? I gave you good advice. He says, you didn't sigh first. In other words, you didn't identify with me. You don't care about me. All of psychology shows, they have a lot of studies of what works, what doesn't work. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters. This comes from the Lubavitch Rebbe. People don't care about what you say until they know you care. When you know someone cares, then they care back. That's what we said in a previous episode, that emotions are reflections. If I know you love me, I love you too. And so the main point here is that if you want to have a good relationship, and all relationships need this, first of all, you have to be sensitive to the other person. The other person also has emotions. They also feel. They're not just part of you. They're part of them. Everybody's an individual. And the only way we can gain proper control is if we identify and we compromise. A relationship has to be fair. And for a relationship to be fair, both people have to be willing to give 50%. I highly recommend, because your chances of getting divorced, if you were like kind of born after 1980, somewhere like 70%. It's a disaster. I highly recommend you can use me. But you have to go to a marriage mediator. A mediator is skilled at getting people to compromise and voluntary compromise. You've got to do it because most of our issues are not childhood, this and that. Most of our issues are we need to get along now. We need to figure out how we're going to live our lives. And if you can do that, as the Rebbe says, if your spouse comes up with an issue, give patient consideration, stop everything you're doing, think about the issue. That is the most important relationship you have. Everything else is nothing compared to that relationship. Give it thought, think how the person is feeling, and then see how you can work together, creating some kind of compromise that will work for both of you.